When we think of King David, a certain image probably pops into your head. The hero from Sunday school, maybe a Renaissance statue. He's the shepherd boy with the sling, the poet king writing the Psalms, the ideal ruler chosen by God himself. But here's the thing, that's only half the story. The biblical text itself paints a picture of another David, a much, much darker figure that we don't often talk about.
I mean, look at this contrast. On one hand, you have the penitent sinner, the man supposedly after God's own heart. But on the other hand, you get a warlord, a god who collected enemy body parts as trophies, who exterminated entire villages just to cover his tracks, and who used the power of the state to murder one of his most loyal soldiers. And these aren't just minor footnotes, they are absolutely central to his story. So, this brings us to the crucial question, the whole point of this explainer. What if these two figures aren't a contradiction? What if the Bible is actually presenting David not as a failure of Israel's experiment with monarchy, but as its most complete and, frankly, unsettling success? Okay, to really understand David, we have to go back before Israel even had a king. See, the people were demanding a ruler, someone like all the other nations. And the prophet Samuel basically told them, be careful what you wish for. He told them exactly what they were signing up for. It all starts with this one word, take. This single word kicks off a prophecy that just lays out the fundamental, brutal nature of kingship. And it's not a pretty picture. Samuel isn't saying corruption or tyranny is a possibility. He's describing the normal operation of power. This is just what kings do. The entire warning, the whole prophecy, it's all built around this one single repeated verb. It's an all-consuming word. It defines what a king does.
Samuel warns them. The king will take your sons for his army, he'll take your daughters for his household, he's going to take the best of your land, your labor, your produce, everything will be sucked into the royal vortex. Essentially, Samuel says, you will become his property. And, well, David becomes the ultimate test case for this grim prophecy. So let's jump ahead to David's rise to power and see how this all plays out. Right from his very first public act, David uses spectacular violence, not just to win, but to build his entire reputation, to build his power. We all know the story of David and Goliath, right? But the text shows us a young man who runs eagerly toward the fight. There's no hesitation, no wrestling with the idea of killing another person. And after Goliath falls, David doesn't just walk away. He takes the man's head and parades it around like a trophy. This is not the behavior of a reluctant killer. This is a performance. And what happens? This performance is immediately rewarded. The people start singing this song. And right away, David's legitimacy gets quantified by his body count. It's a simple equation. More kills equals more status. Power flows to the one who can kill without the burden of a conscience. And this pattern just gets more and more intense. King Saul, who's feeling pretty threatened by now, sets a trap. He says, sure, you can marry my daughter. You just need to bring me a bride price of 100 Philistine foreskins, a task that was clearly designed to get David killed. But David doesn't just meet the demand, he doubles it. He comes back with 200. This moment illustrates the point so brilliantly. Excess in brutality translates directly into excess in status. Violence becomes a kind of currency for political advancement. Now, as David's power grows, his relationship with violence starts to change. It evolves from these personal acts of combat into something much colder, an impersonal tool of the state. Think about it. The young warrior who ran toward Goliath is gone. In his place is an established king who delegates warfare from the comfort of his palace roof. He now wields power from a distance. The murder of Uriah is the perfect, chilling example. First, David takes Bathsheba, just like Samuel prophesied a king would. When the cover-up fails, he doesn't use a sword himself, he just writes a letter. The entire military chain of command becomes the murder weapon. This isn't hot-blooded violence anymore. This is murder as a cold administrative process. Even in victory, David's violence is often performative. It goes way beyond military necessity. After defeating the Moabites, he makes them all lie down and literally measures them with a line, executing 2/3 of them. He deliberately maims captured horses, a valuable military asset. These aren't strategic moves, they are brutal displays of dominance designed to terrorize. And during his time as a fugitive, David used violence to control information. He would raid these non-Israelite villages and then massacre every single person, man, woman, and child,
Why? So there would be no witnesses to contradict the story he was telling his Philistine protectors. It was systematic extermination as a form of PR.
This pattern of cold political calculation extends to David's use of justice, which was, let's be honest, never based on a consistent principle. When some guy claims to have killed Saul, he's executed immediately. Makes David look good. But when David's own general, Joab, murders a political rival, David mourns publicly, but does nothing. And when his own son Amnon rapes his daughter Tamar, the text says he was very angry, but he takes no action. Justice is applied based entirely on political convenience.
Even on his deathbed, David doesn't renounce violence. He instructs his son Solomon to execute a man named Shimei, a man David himself had sworn an oath not to kill. He doesn't break the oath himself, no. He just passes the act of bloodshed on to the next generation. Violence isn't renounced, it's bequeathed. So let's bring this all together. David's entire reign, from his very first act to his very last breath, looks like a perfect case study of the kind of king Samuel warned them about. And this right here is the crucial point. The Bible never denies that David's faith and his repentance were genuine. He truly grieves his sins. But, and this is a huge but, his personal piety changes almost nothing about the fundamental, brutal logic of his kingship. The system of taking remains completely intact.
Which brings us back to our big question. Maybe the common view that David was a good king who just had some terrible failures has it all backwards. What if the text is arguing something far more unsettling? That David wasn't a failure of the monarchy, but its most perfect fulfillment, the living, breathing embodiment of every single warning Samuel ever gave. In the end, we're left with this really difficult truth to hold on to. Israel got precisely the kind of king Samuel told them they would get, a king who would take and take and take. The great irony, and maybe the great tragedy, is that this very same king would also become their most celebrated, their greatest hero.